Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons, initiative, Mike Merle's recent statement, and the way that I think Dungeons & Dragons initiative should work. So I was really pleased to see that Mike Merle's recently came out and said that he is doing initiative different in his Dungeons & Dragons game than is in the standard book. And I think this is great. I think Mike Merle's he's a very, very intelligent guy. I think he's very incredibly careful with the brand of Dungeons & Dragons. He has incredible respect for the game. And he's like it's weird. I consider him like a vanilla human being. And because, he's not, I don't really think he's really an exciting designer from the perspective of he's going to try crazy things and do crazy things. But I see incredible value in Mike Merle's because he's so protective of Dungeons & Dragons. And that's the guy you want it to lead. He's cautious, and he's respectful, and he's protective. And I really appreciate that he's in charge of Dungeons & Dragons. Because I want that brand to be protected, and I want it to do well. I don't want people to be handling it in a way that is slapdash or rushed, right? And so one of the things is he's waited a long time. He didn't say 3 months out, oh, we screwed up initiative, it's wrong, right? But he did recently say he's not happy with how Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition handles initiative, and he's doing it in a new way in his game. And in his game, he handles initiative by what your character is doing. And then you by whatever you're doing, you get a number of dice added to you, which you have to roll for initiative, and the lower you roll, you go first, right? I think this is a terrible idea, right? Generally, from the mechanics of it, one, you're not getting rid of the roll, right? So it's actually going to be slower than the existing system. He acknowledges. He actually didn't say that it was faster. What he said is it's more chaotic and more realistic. And I don't think he even said it was more realistic. He says it puts a little more chaos into what's happening with combat, which very logically, that does make sense. It should be logical that there would be, more chaos and less being able to order and structure what's happening within combats for your player characters, right? So I really like that he shared this. I think it's awesome because he's saying, hey, we didn't create a perfect game. We created a good game. And, it's out there, and it's a reasonable price, and you can buy it, and you can get hundreds, if not well over 1,000 hours of awesomeness out of this game. And but it's not perfect. And I'm trying different things in my game, and you as a dungeon master, you should try some different cool stuff, right? And so I'm blessed to be part of the Nerdarchy writers thread. And I throw around, and there was a lot of discussion on this on the Nerdarchy writers thread. And Nerdarchy themselves talked about this, right? So I think it's really cool that he's opened this discussion. And I think Mike Merle's timing is really good, and I think it's great, right? So even though I disagree with how he's handling initiative in his game, but it does open up the question. So if I don't like the way Mike Merle's does it, and I agree with Mike Merle's that the current game does not have initiative correct, what is the Scott Garibay way of doing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition initiative? Well, one, I've never done this in a game, so I'm just going to tell you now what I would do if I felt 100% free to deal with initiative in any way that I wanted in 5th edition. All right, so one, I actually don't feel that freedom because I'll tell you right now, when you're running Dungeons & Dragons, you're dealing with the big dog. You're dealing with the most classic tabletop role-playing game there is, and players come with a lot of expectations, right? So if I really had a group and that was 100% down with all the crazy stuff I like to run, which when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons, I don't, because there's just it's hard, okay? But I think I will try this in the future because I have been growing more and more trust with my players. And the other issue is I actually don't return to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition how often? I'm definitely running it at least once every 3 months. But, all right, so here, I'm going to jump right in. This is what I would do with initiative, okay? And this definitely comes from indie games, and that is player characters always go first. Period. End of sentence. With the following exceptions. Okay. So here's the rules for initiative in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition that I would implement. Player characters always go first, unless someone initiates the combat. Whoever initiates a combat, they go first because they initiated the combat. It's always driven me crazy that, oh, I'm going to punch that guy in the face. Well, to me, logically, that whoever, is saying, whether that's a non-player character or a player character, you should just roll for that player character, that player character or that non-player character to see if that punch resolves, period, right? Or that sword swing resolves, and that's it. But instead, it's interrupted by initiative, and then somebody can draw a sword and cut somebody down before they even swing. That doesn't make any logical sense to me, right? So that's the way I would do it, is player characters first, always, unless there is someone that initiates combat. And that's another issue, is like, let's say you have 5 player characters, and you have a wizard, right? The wizard is the slowest in the group, like, by all probability. If he says, I'm going to take out a dagger and stab this guy, if the wizard says that, he starts the initiative and he's at the top of the initiative, right? And then I would have all the rest of the player characters go, and then I would have the non-player characters go, right? Now, right out of the gate, people are going, what? Like that, what? That's crazy, right? Well, because, then it's too easy for the player characters. Well, the reality is there's never a time where things are too easy for the player characters. You were the dungeon master, right? So you can throw as many conflicts as you want at them, right? And if you want to make sure that your non-player characters survive an initial attack, you can bring in more hardy NPCs from the gate, right? So basically, you deal with this problem of the player characters always going first by either ramping up the number, like, so if you got 5 player characters, make sure you got 10 people going against them, right? The odds of them being able to take out two non-player characters apiece each, you're going to make sure that you have people left for them to attack, right? And the biggest thing is you get rid of rolling, right? And then I would, I would always allow the player characters to decide how they go and say, you guys decide which one of you goes first and which one of you goes second among yourselves, right? A lot of players are not going to be comfortable with that. They're not going to understand it, right? And they're going to want direction. So with that, I would say go by class, right? So rogues go first, fighters go second, rangers go third, and then, wizards and sorcerers and warlocks are all the way down at the end, right? Because they're the slowest, right? So the more martially based you are, the more likely you are to go first, right? And here's what this does. It immensely makes things faster. And if you're, and if you're as a dungeon master, like, oh man, I don't want my, my player characters to go before my non-player characters, it just gives them too much power. One, these guys are supposed to be the center of your world, right? And so it's just simpler. And by the way, it's actually precedented. It was actually this way in Dungeons and Dragons, Dragonlance Saga Edition back in the 90s. So there's precedence for it. That's definitely the way I would run initiative. And I was really thrilled to see Mike Merles brought this up. And that's my suggestion for running initiative in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Take care, everybody.